Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today for Mayhem on Main Street. Trump's attack on small business break the back of local economies. This is the latest event in the Center for American Progress's series of virtual events highlighting the impact of DOGE on everyday Americans. Today's event is co-sponsored by Small Business Majority. My name is Michael Negron. I'm currently a policy fellow with Groundwork Collaborative, a progressive think tank focused on economic issues, and a member of the board of directors for Small Business Majority. I have served in roles at every level of government, most recently as Special Assistant for Economic Policy to President Joe Biden in the White House. In the coming weeks, I will be joining the Center for American Progress as a Senior Fellow for Economic Opportunity. Today, we will talk with small business owners about how the Trump administration's actions and policies are harming millions of small businesses across the country. When the Trump administration came into office, it inherited an economy that was growing, with inflation falling from its 2022 highs, and an economy that had experienced a record high 21 million new business applications over the course of the last 4 years. President Trump set about squandering this, launching a trade war that drove the economy to shrink in the first quarter of 2025 for the first time in 3 years, while slashing critical services for families and small businesses, all to help to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. As I covered in an April blog post on the CAP website, the Trump administration is eliminating 43% of staff at the Small Business Administration and firing thousands of staff that support small businesses at the Treasury Department, Commerce Department, Department of Agriculture, and the Internal Revenue Service. DOGE has also driven efforts to eliminate the Minority Business Development Agency and the CDFI fund. These cuts mean that small businesses will have a harder time reaching a live human when they need help or accessing the services that they need. If this isn't bad enough, the Trump administration is making these cuts while raising costs for working families and small businesses through his erratic trade policy. As recently reported just last week by the Washington Post, the president has made more than 50 announcements of new or changed tariff policies since taking office. That's about one every couple of days, leaving millions of small business owners scratching their heads about what is next. Even following his recently announced agreement with China, tariffs are still at the highest level they've been in nearly a century. On top of this, the big, beautiful bill that congressional Republicans are working on would end the Affordable Care Act tax credits that support health insurance for about 1/5 of small business owners. That's 4.2 million. And it would impose big cuts to SNAP and to Medicaid, which not only means less spending power for small businesses because their consumers are getting hit, but the SNAP cuts themselves will also hurt independent grocery stores and a food supply chain that supports nearly 400,000 jobs. Today, you're going to hear firsthand from current and former entrepreneurs. We are joined today by Vanessa Fagioli, the owner of Ammerisol Foods in California, Janice Malone, the owner of Vivian's Door in Mobile, Alabama, and Dilawar Syed, an entrepreneur who served as the deputy administrator of the Small Business Administration and served with me in the Biden administration. So Vanessa, let's start with you. Your business imports and distributes foods from Latin America, including from my mother's home country of Guatemala. Can you tell us about how the Trump tariff policies are affecting you? And in the course of your answer, if you could also just share a little bit more about yourself and your business as well.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Michael. Thank you for making this panel possible. A little bit about me. I am the co-owner and chief financial officer for Ammerisol Foods. We are a mother and daughter team located in Van Nuys, California. So what do? We import food products from Latin America, specifically Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, and we distribute to supermarket chains. Before COVID, we created safety nets. So we started working with some product made in the U.S. just in case something would ever happen in the distribution chain. Regarding of what is currently happening right now, you hit so many good points, Michael. We are really scratching our heads every day with my mom because we don't know what the current administration will come up with in a way, what changes will be made. And for us in the industry, it is very hard. For example, changing prices. Supermarket chains need 30 to 60 days for any price change. We all thought, and I'm talking about my current manufacturers, my providers, we all thought that the tariffs were paused for 90 days, as we heard from President Trump. But to our surprise, we got slapped with heavy tariffs from CBP. We're all puzzled because we were not expecting this. And raising our prices, it's not just raise our prices and it goes into effect. So in 13 years that we've been in business, this is the first time that I tell my mom, I really don't think we're going to survive this. And even though we're in the food industry, but everything, the whole thing is just crumbling, from immigration to cuts in different aids like SNAP and food stamps to tariffs. So it's just a whole thing that's really affecting us and our consumers.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Let's turn next to Janice. My understanding, Janice, is that that you haven't fully experienced the full impact of the administration's tariff policy, but of course, if that's changed, please let us know in your answer. But that one thing you are watching closely is debates in Congress over cuts to Medicaid and Affordable Care Act subsidies because it affects you as a business owner. Could you please share more about this? And in the course of your answer, just like Vanessa, if you can start by just giving us a little background on yourself and on your business. Vanessa, you need to unmute. Or Janice, you need to unmute.
Thank you so much. I'm Janice Malone here in Mobile, Alabama, and I have a for-profit business called BRC Design and Print, which we do get some impact from tariffs because we do buy our products, not all from manufacturers that are in the U.S. But for Vivian's Door, I'm the executive director. It's a nonprofit we started about 5 years ago now. And it helps small businesses grow scale and reinvest in their communities. We do that through training, support services, and a whole lot of community engagement work. And the cuts to Medicaid, and as it especially relates to the Affordable Care Act, will have great impact on both the people that we employ and also on the people, the businesses that we support. I know for us, we in fact hire our people in. We don't have a health plan per se, but we have what we call a benefit bank. And through that benefit bank, we deploy a certain amount of money a month for each of those staff members. And most of them buy their insurance through the Affordable Care Plan. So if subsidies in that plan actually end up being cut, then and then if they raise the limits on who can participate in that program, then they're going to be greatly affected by what happens there. Many of the people we serve in these underserved communities that we work in are on Medicaid. And the Medicaid provisions, they are currently, the state I'm in, Alabama, they don't even participate in the expansion. But there are 41 other states who do. And so one of the proposals is that instead of a 90% subsidy, they're going to go to an 80% subsidy, which means that the state would have to pick up the rest. And so if that occurs, many of the people that are on Medicaid, who are already pushed to the ground by inflation and so many other things, are going to totally be affected by what we see there. And my belief is that everybody, deserves to have basic health care, period. It gives us a healthier environment. People come to work energized, and their families, they don't have as much stress. And so I'm hearing that the reporting requirements may change, that people may have to report monthly on their work status, and that instead of the 1 year requirement for Medicaid, they'll be reporting, multiple times throughout the year. It's just horrendous pressure on the people who these programs support. And as we, talk about fraud and abuse in that program, most of that fraud and abuse that we do see, the providers are doing that. So the people who are receiving these services are not totally affected. They're looking at spending caps, all kinds of stuff that just make me a little bit cringy because like I said, we're already working with people who are at the margins, and what will it look like for us to try and raise them up when the government is not participating very well in that whole program? So,
Thank you, Janice.
yes.
I'd like to turn next to Dilawar. Dilawar, could you talk about the role that the federal government can play and does play in supporting small businesses and what the DOGE cuts mean for those services? And then, of course, as you answer, please also give us your entrepreneurship journey and time in public service.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, and thanks for having me. Before I get started, I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge the awful news that President Biden's health that we heard last night. I'm sure I speak for all of us who are on this panel and folks who are joining us to wish him and his family the very best. Michael, you and I have seen that leader in action. His courage, his conviction, frankly, has inspired us every single day. And I think he's going to inspire us on this journey as he takes on this flight. I'm an entrepreneur turned public servant. I ran an AI healthcare company based out of California before I joined the administration. And prior to that, I built software and consumer web businesses. I have now moved to Austin, Texas, where I went to school. I'll be faculty at University of Texas at Austin, and we'll be doing some policy work at the LBS school, and again, staying involved with the small business community. As you all know, within the government, almost every agency has a role to play in terms of supporting small businesses, but the SBA is responsible and as part of the cabinet as a voice for small businesses. And during COVID, as I'm sure many of you who are on this call know, that SBA played an outsized role, $1.2 trillion worth of COVID relief that was channeled to the small business community at SBA administered. And just to remind ourselves, that was both President Trump, first term, and President Biden. When there's a crisis, folks came together and helped out. Now, the impact of that was that SBA inherited a large amount of loan portfolio. So just to give you a sense of scale, in a normal year, last year, SBA did $56 billion worth of funding through various lenders across the country. Right now, SBA has more than $450 billion, almost 10x of COVID loans that is responsible for servicing. So when Michael talks about 43% cut in a workforce, and many of us are business owners, imagine you lay off half your company and you now have 10 times the work to do. And on top of it, you're being asked to take over education loans, which has nothing to do with SBA. And that is $1.6 trillion, more than the COVID relief. I cannot, like Vanessa, I scratch my head how anyone even came up with that. And how do we expect the organization that's literally being stripped of its capacity to serve folks? And these are folks who are calling us every day. I'll give you one example. Last year, one of the calls that stayed with me for a long time, someone reached to me directly. This individual was unfortunately terminally ill. He wanted to make sure that his COVID loan could be managed by his wife. He couldn't get any answers. And he had to get this quickly because the doctor said, you got weeks to go. We're talking about tens and thousands of small business owners with limited resources who reached our agencies for support. So the first impact is customer service, which already was stretched thin, and we heard a lot of complaints, and frankly, we need more resources. Now there is no capacity in part of this organization to serve our existing small business owners. We've also seen almost a dozen offices in some of our biggest metro areas being shut down. Atlanta, Chicago, Denver, New Orleans, Los Angeles, San Francisco. In fact, I thought we needed more people in those offices and in the field. And I was appalled that actually they're shutting down offices. And what that does is it also has an effect on the next generation of entrepreneurs. One of the things that we were very proud of, amongst many things in our administration, was that we saw a record number of new small businesses that started. 22 million Americans started a new business. And we saw the rate was one of the highest in minority communities. As an example, Black women entrepreneurs were starting a business at 4 times the rate of the general population. So when we showed up in underserved communities, we didn't just do it because it's the right thing to do. It also made sense because that's where the demand signal was. So when you cut out programs that make sure that you reach out to underserved communities, you are actually cutting off the dreams of the next generation of brands that will be built by a Black woman or by a veteran or by a Hispanic man. And to me, we are really hurting our economy with these kind of cuts. We've seen as part of the 2026 budget and also DOGE cuts, women business centers being shut down, veterans training being canceled by DOD. I actually couldn't believe that when folks told me that. We've seen all entrepreneurship program as part of the division of Organization of Entrepreneurial Development is being shut down. And so these were critical programs to train the next generation of entrepreneurs. And final point, very quickly, federal government contracts. As some of you who are probably contractors at state and local and also federal government, you know that federal government spends $700 billion a year on contracts. We had a priority to make sure small businesses get their fair share. We had a record number of, for the first time, 30%, nearly 30% of all federal contracts went to small businesses. And we still had a lot of work to do when it comes to making contracts available with the Black community. This administration has cut the target from 15% to 5%. It's one thing to say we're not going to grow. It's another thing to say we're going to actually take away opportunity that we made available to a women entrepreneur. And that would mean that hundreds of firms, thousands of firms that are minority-owned contractors will shut down, leading to layoffs. The 8A program that I think many of you are familiar with here, unfortunately, I don't see the administration supporting that program. That's been critical to get entrepreneurship in many communities where there was access to federal government contracts. So unfortunately, these cuts are really harmful, not just to this community. Frankly, it's harmful to the nation's economy, given the outsized role small businesses play in our economy and our competitiveness.
Thank you, Dilawar. So next, I want to transition to a set of questions for the group. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, there has been reporting on just how often the president has revised his tariff policies at more than 50 times since taking office. We saw just a few days ago, the National Federation of Independent Businesses released a survey that found not only that there was 4 straight months of decline in small business optimism, but also that there was the lowest share of businesses planning for capital investments in the next 6 months. It reached the lowest level since April of 2020, so the beginning of the pandemic. And so uncertainty is really rearing its head for everybody. And so let's start with you, Dilawar, and then we'll go around. Can you comment on what these frequent changes in trade policy mean for small businesses? How important is certainty when a small business owner is making plans or investments?
Minister, something you said, it just hit me when you said that your suppliers, or rather your distributors, need 60 to 90 days to be able to affect a price change. I mean, that's a prime example. And this is one of many examples in almost virtually every sector. You don't run a business on a 90-day cycle. And we saw the president slashing tariffs from 145% to 30%, which, by the way, is still, we're in a 90-day discussion period. The last time tariffs with China took us years to negotiate. I served at the State Department as a commercial diplomat. You've seen these are bilateral negotiations that can at any point take longer. Every country has their set of politics. We're not the only one in the world. So the idea that we are doing this, one step back, one step forward, 2 steps backwards. And just last week, the president, when he was in the Gulf, he said that he's giving notice to 100 plus countries to quickly make deals. We are already more than halfway through the 90-day period. So it's not just China, it's many of our friends and allies that we have yet to see these deals. So I'm very concerned that we will have any finality for most part of our trading partners in the coming weeks. It may take years. And the impact of what just Vanessa said is just one story, and it's pretty concerning because you do need certainty. And just to give you a sense of scale, the numbers that I've seen, that 2/3 of all small businesses in our country import. 2/3 of the 35 million small businesses import. Either they import, like yourself, Vanessa, to actually then resell in some cases, or they, as restaurant, import a certain ingredient and for their menu. And 97% of all small businesses, all exporters are small businesses. So folks may not think of small businesses being at the front end of the trade policy impact. They are at the tip of the spear with the least amount of capacity. And also, I think one thing that folks don't realize is that in addition to the financial burden and uncertainty, how much headache it takes when it comes to paperwork. The idea that you have to fill out this form, I was reading somewhere that you have to fill a form, and you have to, if you import something, you have to be able to say for every sub part, what is the component that is US made versus outside the United States. Who has the capacity and operational resources to do that, or even the expertise? And they're going to keep changing those forms every second week. And we see how this government works, where they're rolling out websites that don't work. Imagine the lack of support. So it's unfortunate that we have so much gloom to talk about, but it is pretty damning when it comes to the ability to just run a business, much less have any certainty, given this environment. So I'll let the business owners share more perspective on this as well, Michael.
Janice, would you like to get in on this one? You got to unmute, Janice.
I think the biggest thing is really the cost volatility. Businesses try to plan and they try to predict how they're going to spend their money. And when you can't do that, you don't even know how to hire. You don't even know how to really make the changes that are necessary to even stay afloat in the market. And so I just think that that's the cost and pricing volatility, supply chain disruptions. Some of the supply chains that we use, we can't even use those anymore because we don't really know how that impacts. So we're quickly running, trying to find other supply chain people. But the truth of the matter, as soon as we find those, this stuff is still changing. It's changing every day. And so it's like, is it a good time to be in business? But, small businesses run America. 70% of the businesses in America are small businesses. So I just think that toning down access to market is not the best answer in running this country. And then turning, not being open and available for trade partners is problematic in my head as well. So, and the administrative burden, as Delaware said, that administrative burden, small businesses already, they're constrained by staff, they're constrained by resources, and they're constrained by capital. And so for them to take on something else is probably going to push them right out the door.
Thank you, Janice. Vanessa, would you like to speak to your experience with this uncertainty?
Uncertainty is just, it's really killing us. And once again, we're all scratching our heads, and I'm talking to my other business partners that I work with, because again, we thought that the tariffs were paused for 90 days because that's what we heard from Mr. Trump. And then surprise, surprise, we got the bill I need to change my pricing. I already have my CBP bill over here that I need to pay for tariffs. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I need 60, 90 days for an approved price change to my supermarket, and I need to deliver the product with the new price now. I can't, my margins are already so thin that taking over, just trying to absorb that 10% just completely kills me and leaves me out of business. And we're waiting to see if President Trump's gonna add the other 8% to Nicaragua. And, I'm at the supermarkets because I love listening to my consumers. The consumers they get angry at us. And my clients too, I'm going to say, my supermarket chains were like, Vanessa, why are you raising prices? President Trump said that they hold the tariffs for 90 days. I was like, no. That's what we all thought as well. But no, the tariffs are there. And now those are the new prices. But, we don't know what's going to happen next week. We don't know if tomorrow, we don't know when things might change again. So it is so hard for us to plan. We used to do, in school, and all the resources from the SBA, 10,000 small business, the Emerging Leaders Program from SBA, all those resources that I was blessed to be accepted and go through the programs. We were doing 3 to 5 year growth plan. Right now, I have a survival plan because I don't know what's going to happen to us in a month from now. As I told my mom, we cannot take the hit of this 10%. And that's not only that, it's for example, the pouches for our beans, they're manufactured in China because China has the best quality for those type of pouches. From China, it goes to El Salvador, then it gets packed in El Salvador, and then it gets imported over here. So I do believe the way the world is, it's all connected and we're all one. All trade is connected. And for us to have uncertainty and just from one day to another, just saying, oh, there we go with the tariffs, or now this increase or that, it doesn't run that way. It feels that the administration, it feels like they've never owned a business and they don't really know how things really work. So it is really challenging. And again, we're very positive and we're trying to stay positive, but this is a really, really tough time because I see also the firing, the cut in spending. The markets are not buying what they used to. They don't want backstock. They don't want overstock. So it is really tightening the rope in our necks, kind of like I like to describe it. Thank you.
Vanessa. And one thing striking that you mentioned, that some of your clients believe that the tariffs were entirely paused for 90 days, getting the overall uncertainty. And just this weekend, you may have seen this, Vanessa, or others in the audience may have, but the Treasury Secretary was on a Sunday news show, and he said that the administration would, in the coming months, if it doesn't get results that it wants from its negotiations, would be sending letters to countries, setting those country by country levels that originally had been announced on April 2nd. And so you could find that Japan has a 24% tariff, for example, or Cambodia has 49%. Those numbers that were rolled out originally on April 2nd that were paused, just adding another layer of uncertainty to everything that you all are experiencing.
Oh, yes. And I just wanted to add something. We got a deal with Costco this year, and we got in because of DEI. And when I see that they're cutting, all this, it's just, I thought this was the land of the opportunities, and it just feels that everything's just being cut. And for us being part of that program, we were able to present to Costco our products and get accepted. But now it feels very frustrating and overwhelming and really disappointing in a way. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to another question for the group. One of the reasons that the president has given for his tariff policy has been his desire to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So this is another question for the group, and I'd like to start with you, Vanessa. Do you think that these increases in tariffs on countries, including the elevated tariffs on China, will lead more businesses to expand manufacturing in the United States, lead more businesses to try to purchase from vendors located in the United States?
Not really. And I'm going to give you just an example. For example, we just did some shippers for some product, and I'm just going to put basic numbers here. The shipper made here, it's a carton shipper for product. That product made here costs me each shipper $250. In El Salvador, it costs me $20. So even with the tariffs on that shipper, I'll get it manufactured in El Salvador. Going back to, we do have product made here in the USA, but my manufacturers here in the USA use product, for example, plastic and other material and ingredients that is outsourced. So they are getting hit with the tariffs, even if it is made here in the USA. Will it bring back more manufacturing over here? My humble opinion is no. And for example, in my case, for my industry, we cater to the Latino consumer. A lot of our consumers are not able to travel to their countries. So that product that we bring to them, it gives them that nostalgia back. It gives them that little taste of home. And they're really craving, they want the taste of their native countries. And that's what we bring. But at the same time, with the tariffs, we're reaching a point where we are no longer affordable, because a lot of our consumers, and even here in LA, people are living paycheck to paycheck. And if we're going to increase our costs, which the supermarkets, a lot of products already increase cost, they're going to cut in spendings, and then I'm going to be left out of the picture here, because they're going to say, I want the product because I want that connection to the homeland, but I don't have the money anymore to be able to pay it. So they go to the substitution of products, and that leaves me out of the picture. So I again, to the answer, no, I don't think that would increase the manufacturing here in the US. Because going back again, I do believe that the world economy, it is connected, and we all help each other, and we all complement each other. Whatever you don't do, I do. So that's how it should work. And that's why we have the CAFTA. So the US also sold to El Salvador with 0 tariffs. So it was reciprocal. Nobody was abusing anybody, not in El Salvador.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Janice, would you like to chime in on this question about manufacturing and whether it'll come back with these tariffs?
Did you ask me, Michael?
Just inviting you to
Oh, yeah. As far as manufacturing coming back to this country, I'm old enough to know that manufacturing was once in this country at a large magnitude. And manufacturing found its way, as businesses will, to try and get cheaper costs and better economy of scale and all of that. So all of that went into play. What we're seeing now is manufacturers aren't making moves. We don't see anybody moving to set up a plant because of what they're seeing with this uncertainty. And so if we're not seeing this now, when are we going to see it? Do we really believe that some date in the future, these guys are going to make a move? No, because it costs money to set plants up. The resources, money, all kinds of stuff. So my belief is that no, we're not going to have that heyday that somebody's dreaming about. That's gone. And so we need to move on to what is reality and what we now have to live with and what we can do about that.
Thank you, Janice. Dilawar, do you have thoughts you want to share on this?
Yeah, I agree with Vanessa and Janice, and I just want to offer another frame. And this is partly one of the challenges we have is we live in a world of disinformation. And I think, Vanessa, you alluded to this, that when the president declares, I have given the brief, people think there's no tariffs, and folks don't realize the truth and how complicated the situation is. When it comes to manufacturing, you may find examples of a few brands who were in the planning of, looking at a market to locate for manufacturing, and because of all this may say, well, I'll come to US, and somebody might just say, look, here's an example. But those are generally larger companies, and they are companies that frankly are transacting for something from this administration. And as you have seen, all this is, for lack of a better word, a crony capitalism, right? Can you indulge in a transaction? Would you humor me and I'll give you something else? That is not to say that at scale manufacturing will shift from China to the United States of America. And by the way, in a few cases that might even happen, you've had members of the cabinet of this administration outright saying that robots will run those factories. So why are you bringing them here anyway? If you're talking about job creation, you're admitting it. We're going to have beautiful factories that will be modernized. And so you're not going to create job creation. So I don't think, unfortunately, the intended, if there's a policy imperative here, which I don't think there is, will ever come to fruition. Secondly, the switching cost. Even if you say you want to provide some incentives and perhaps want to avoid tariffs, you can't just overnight do this. And third, even if that happens in some cases, I don't think we're going to see a job creation outcome that folks are selling to us as a people.
Thank you, Dilawar. So I want to get to, I'm going to combine one of the audience questions with a question that I had also prepared for you guys. And that is this. And I'd like to start with you, Janice, and then it's open to everyone else. In this climate, what do you think, what is the best thing that the administration or Congress or state and local governments can be doing to support small businesses in the midst of this tumult in international trade policy and federal cuts?
The biggest thing that they can do immediately is to try to expand access to capital. With all this uncertainty, everybody's reflexing, holding what little pot they can, but you cannot make growth happen without capital. So expanding that access to capital. And the tax codes simplify that so the average person really knows what they are dealing with, especially you throw this tariff stuff in the mix now. It's like, I can't do that math. That I can't comprehend. My people don't even understand. And then, of course, address the workflow challenges, or the workforce challenges, rather, that we have from all of this that you've got going on. You got all these people out of the market now that were producing citizens in the market. What does this workforce we have now look like? Throw AI into that mix in. Let's talk about how many people are going to really get up and go to work every day. I'm not sure that we're going to see that real number for some time. And then the other big thing I talk about, these contracts that Delaware talked about, expand that access to contracting. Small businesses are not doing well anyways in this market. And then you cut off the access to contracts really at the micro level. And then what you end up with is all of these businesses that those contracts might have lifted up and might have helped, that would help the economy, are no longer able to even get their arms around that. So, go ahead and expand that contracting. You can do what you do with DEI, but expand this contracting so that we know what the playing field looks like. And then, of course, continue to foster innovation, because by the looks of it, we're going to have to do things quicker and faster if we're to stay afloat. So we're going to have to fly by the seat of our pants and then this train stops.
Would you like to get in, Delaware?
Yes, I'll build on what Janice said on access to capital. Look, we all know this. We've all been business owners that you need capital to be able to grow, especially when you see your input costs going up. And one of the things that I was very proud of at SBA in our administration was that we were really expanding the network of lenders that actually banked with women entrepreneurs. And so this is and minority entrepreneurs, CDFIs, community banks, regional banks, so that you can work with them and get an SBA loan. And secondly, we really invested in increasing small dollar loan. I was actually surprised when I joined the SBA that an average SBA loan is north of $500,000. Many companies don't need that. They need a $20,000 loan or maybe a $50K loan. And now they probably definitely need it to just even cover your cost. But most banks were not interested in talking to you because, you know what, they said, it takes me the same amount of time to do a small loan versus a large loan. So I'll just do all the large loans. So those intentional changes we drove led to an increase of 50% of small dollar loans. One of the things that I saw very recently that the new administration announced that really actually broke my heart is that they're going to move away from small dollar lending. And in the name of so-called bringing back manufacturing, they are increasing the loan limit. So you could have a loan, SBA loan up to $15 or $20 million. So if a lender can just do one loan a month of $20 million, why would they want to do 50 smaller loans? Because it takes them a lot more time. So I'm actually very concerned that we are going backwards when it comes to democratizing access to capital. And forget about maintaining it, Michael. We're looking at drying up that. And especially at a time when commercial banks are often not available, especially in underserved regions, in rural parts of the country. So one request I have for members of Congress and the administration is, please, sure enough, you can go offer more loans to manufacture, but don't do it at the expense of the long tail, which is the heartbeat of our economy. And the incentives are not stacked up with the new policy that they will actually want to work on smaller loans. So that's one solution we need badly. And actually, I'm concerned that if you don't do this, we won't see this 100,000 plus loans that we did last year with very, very small businesses from the SBA's network of lenders.
Thank you. Vanessa, do you have any thoughts to share here as to what state, local governments, Congress, or the federal government can be doing to be helpful in this moment?
Offer us some more stability. What I want to see, for example, I was watching in Congress, they were talking last time, so pretty much I'm going to make it very simple. Who's going to pay for all those increases? The consumer. Bottom line, who's going to pay for this? We're going to pass it on to the consumer. What's going to happen? It's going to cost inflation. Mr. Jerome Powell, I love listening to what he has to say. Whenever we try to get funding, interest rates are higher. And Mr. Trump said, bring the interest rates lower. But it's just, we are going to raise the prices on everything that we have, and it's going to create inflation. Our consumer is leaving the supermarket with the receipt in their hands, shocked of why one bag and it's $200 literally. So I would love to Congress to give us some stability, to don't forget about small businesses. Don't cut the SBA. All those resources that we have for small businesses have really made a difference. I talked to a lot of business owners and the programs, and it really makes a big difference. Goldman Sachs, Inner Cities Capital Connections, a fast pace program, all these different programs, the SBA Emerging Leader programs really help us grow our business and create better jobs. But if government and Congress stop funding these programs, we're going to be left with literally nothing. And we want more stability. The uncertainty is killing us. We can't just get this increases and pass it on to the consumer right away. It's going to take time. We're going to pass it to the consumer, but it takes time. If we survive, it's going to take some time. So we really need the help and stop this madness.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I'm going to pose now a number of the questions that we've got coming in through the chat. So thank you, everybody, for submitting questions. First question that I want to raise to this group, and we should start with you, Dilawar, and then if others want to chime in, you're very welcome to. And that is this: how harmful has federal contract termination, the federal contract terminations, been for small businesses and small disadvantaged businesses in particular? Are small businesses and small disadvantaged businesses uniquely vulnerable in these situations? Dilawar?
The short answer is no. Yes, absolutely. And no, there was a reason why we had an 8A program that was, by the way, authorized by Congress. It's both members across the aisle support this program. And it was designed to build capacity amongst minority-owned small contracting firms to be able to, vie for these contracts. And as I mentioned, we spend billions of dollars a year. Most small businesses don't have the capacity to even navigate the bureaucracy of Department of Defense or HHS or others to be able to provide an IT service or janitorial service or a catering service. All of that we did, and you went through hoops to get through this. And people, by the way, got certified, and now they're in the midst of pipeline of contracts. And with a stroke of pen, they are literally in the name of so-called, going after DEI. They're killing these programs. So the effects are devastating for not only contractors but those their employees and their communities. Many of these contractors are in underserved regions. Often they're the largest employers in their town or their small city. And so the question is, and I think I want to make sure as somebody who's a problem solver, what do we do about this? I mean, we can talk about all these problems because there's a long list. We could spend 45 hours. We'll have more things to share. And I think one of the things in this moment, I do think there's an opportunity for us to organize. And I do think your voice matters. There are 35 million small businesses. You employ millions and millions of Americans. And the fact that the president did a reversal on his pretty sharp reversal on his tariffs. I mean, he said this was not a negotiation tactic. He meant it. And then they backed down, in part because the small business sentiment was extremely concerning to this administration. And I think we need to keep speaking up. And I appreciate that, we brought in, obviously, business owners on this call as well. Make calls, show up on town halls. Talk about these examples. Take your tariff bill and show $19,000 I got in the mail today. Do you want to pay for me, or do you want to go fund me campaign, Mr. Congressman or Ma'am Congresswoman? I think we need to make it vivid because, to your point, I think you said earlier, there is a flirt with the truth here, right? And folks misposition things, and people don't believe the impact of these things. So whether it's contracting or other things, so those firms that are unfortunately going under, we need to talk about the stories and put the real human face to who's being laid off, who's being shut down. Because these programs, let me also say, and Michael, you know this, you work in government, it's very difficult to stand these up or restart these programs. Not only we have gotten rid of many of the employees, much of the brain trust of SBA is gone. People who had institutional knowledge they're gone. So when we have the opportunity to bring those programs back, I also am concerned, how are we going to have the institutional capacity to rebuild this? So, it's important for us to organize, tell these stories, and try to stem the damage that we're already seeing, whether it's contracting or tariffs or just entrepreneurship support overall.
Thank you, Dilawar. The next question I have is for Vanessa and for Janice. So we've got questioners who wanted to hear from you in particular. As accomplished entrepreneurs yourselves, what advice would you have for aspiring small business owners, given the uncertainty and the barriers that you've discussed?
If you want to start a business right now, wow. I do believe that chaos can create opportunity if you are ready for it. But it is very hard, because you really have to see what pain you can solve in the market and create a business out of that, solving that pain. At this point, as I was saying, going back to the tariffs, we all thought that the tariffs were on hold for 90 days, and surprise, we all got a bill. We couldn't plan for it. So at this point in time, creating an entity, I am an entrepreneur by heart, and I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I would just advise that see what pain you can solve in the market currently, and really study and find out that data. It's very important, because it's a rough time to start a business right now.
I would just like to add on to that. Many businesses have been started in rough times, as the multitude of businesses have been started in times that are rough. So Vanessa is right. Find the pain in the market, and then you always have that opportunity on the opposite side of creating the calm that goes with that pain. But any business that wants to start a business now needs to understand what it means to be in business, needs to understand how to be a business person. They need all the knowledge, all the education, they need all the mentorship. They do not need to go into this alone. This is not something for the faint of heart. This is for people who are willing to stay and stick it out.
Thank you. I'm going to combine a couple questions here for Dilawar that are essentially about the data and what we think will happen. So the questions are, what share of the economy, what share of GDP is derived from small businesses, employment? What do we know about small business closures? I don't think we know very much. And what do you think the impact will be of the DOGE cuts on the economy more broadly, based on what we know will happen to small businesses?
I think just as if you follow this conversation, and we had two great entrepreneurs here, and you can just see this is a story in literally every block, every community, and every main street. Small businesses are the vast majority of our GDP. They're actually the largest portion of our employment that is sourced from small businesses. And I'm talking about, obviously, these are main street, and there are also small manufacturers, there are also startups. Let's not forget, there are many technology. That's the world I come from. The big brand that we use today were all 20 years ago startups. I can't imagine what they're dealing with. And we're also talking about services issues. If you're exporting as a product or a service as a tech startup to another market, you also may see reciprocal tariffs. So the impact is pretty broad and significant. And I think we're going to see within a matter of weeks or months new reporting coming both from government's own data, but also from financial services firms on where we are heading. I wish I had better news and say that somehow we will come out somehow okay from this. But again, I do think that alluding to also what my panelists were saying here, that it can be an opportunity if we can weather this storm, if we can form this community and share best practices. And let me just say one thing I can point back to is the pandemic, which is a very, very dark time. If you just go back 4.5 years ago, we didn't even know whether there would be a vaccine. Things were shut down. And yes, government was a good actor there. It came together, but it was also because I think the small business community, teamed up with each other, and there was local support. I was an advocate in California, and it was amazing new efforts started. So I do think in this moment too, we need to find a way to organize and build this muscle as a community and make sure that we are helping each other. I love your point about Janice. Have your partners with you, have a coach with you, and see how we can weather through this very difficult time. But unfortunately, there will be a negative impact on the economy. I hope it's not. It doesn't help anyone. And we want us to succeed as a country. But given where we are, unless you see those deals happen quickly and the president can reverse his stance and seeing writing on the wall, we may go through this pain. Just one last comment I'll make is, I think one of the things with the larger firms is, you can track things on a daily basis on what's happening in the stock market. And you saw the administration eventually being very sensitive to that, and they reversed a lot of things and stocks went back up. And the president said, now you can go and buy the stock. The challenge with small businesses is, what is small businesses metric that this administration is tracking every single day? And that's why it's so important that we organize. What CAP is doing is critically important. We need to elevate this and say this pain is being experienced every hour. Yes, we may not have a number to report in our markets that you can track and feel good or bad about this as a country, but we are seeing what's going on. And I think this is why the organizing part matters so much, and elevating these voices are so important in this moment.
Thank you. And Janice or Vanessa, either of you like to chime in on this one?
One point that Attila made is that small businesses, everything really happens local. And so, we can't ignore what really happens up at the federal level, but we can come together in our local markets and make the people who are responsible for what we voted them into office for to get some of this pain relieved for us from a local level by the things that they can do. And so that to me is one of the bigger points, we're going to form this network, or we're going to be some grassroots effort, or at least from an engagement point of view, let's make it happen local.
And something very important also, for example, we donate thousands of pounds of food to our local Valley Food Bank. So, just talking a little bit about what Janice was saying, we do focus a lot on our local community. How can we empower our community, our city? And now we're going to cut in purchasing product because we know things are going to slow down. We see it, that things have significantly slowed down. So that means my donations for the food bank are gonna reduced. They're gonna be reduced because my whole purchasing will be reduced. Everything's just slower right now. So I'm really hoping that our politicians could really come together and just really talk like, not like stubborn children, but as like they see the people, because I see my team every day. I see on their faces that they're worried of what is going to happen, of this uncertainty. How are they going to pay the bills? Are we going to close the business? What is going to happen to them? That's why they say we don't even turn on the TV anymore, because we get anxiety. And I'm really hoping that our Congress people work together to solve this, because the bottom line, like us, that we are sustaining the economy, as we can say, we're not a S&P 500 company that we get the data every day, pretty much like you say, Michael. We are a small business creating good, caring jobs for our communities, for our teams that support their families. And they're just drowning us with this uncertainty, and it would be very sad to close our doors if nothing gets reached and we keep getting squeezed into this uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to touch upon something that you all have already talked about a little bit, but it's come through in the questions. And so there's a couple of questions along these lines, and that is folks in the audience here seeking advice. What are the best ways to make your voices heard, whether it's with federal officials, whether it's state and local? Are there particular places they should go? Are there particular strategies or tactics that you think will be effective? And so I think this is a fitting way to close out, and anyone who wants to chime in first, and we'll try to get everybody in before we close out.
I think that.
Please go ahead, Janice, after you.
I think that every local environment has a congressperson and representatives that are at the federal level. And those are people that you have to begin to befriend and begin to let them know where the pain is and how it's hurting, on a regular and continuous basis. That would be one of my strong suggestions.
I second that wholeheartedly. We all have members of Congress. We have local representatives. They all, by the way, small business is the most nonpartisan subject you can talk about. It's a small business. It is not political. And no matter which party you are, or you're not a member of a party, you need to be responsive to these members' concerns, these small business concerns. So one, I would say you should reach out or show up to these town halls. The other idea I have is, this is a thought here, is that, I also think that small businesses are not just businesses, they're also community builders. You are, often you're known in your community, they know your local employer, you're a leader in that community as well. Consider, if you're a small business, hosting a small conversation in your own business. Bring businesses like yourself and just sit down over coffee and just talk about what people are going through and share that. Share that on TikTok, share that on Truth Social. The president clearly likes that. Share that on X, and flood the zone. Flood the zone about these voices and what's going on in these communities. Make it real. And I know it can be outside our comfort zone because we're business people, but at the end of the day, if Vanessa, when you said at the very outset that you will not survive this, that's just painful to hear. Mm-hmm. If I have to be between survival and just getting out there, let's consider getting out there and organizing. And I know we don't have small businesses they don't have the capacity to be organizers. But I think in this moment, in this time, we have to consider that option to make sure this is lifted. And you'll see people respond to that. As you've seen already, the changes that we've seen, they've in part come about because the small business sentiment has been experienced, and people know that there is a lot of outrage in the small business community.
Vanessa, any parting thoughts for us?
I speak a lot with my congressman here in Venice, and I'm telling him what is happening, and I'm really hoping that he makes his voice is being heard at Congress and laws or changed and help us survive this uncertain time.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you to all the panelists, to Vanessa, to Dilawar, to Janice. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. I think as I hope you heard loud and clear here, and I think as Dilawar said very articulately, that despite all the chaos, the pressure works. And the president didn't change his tariff policies 50 plus times because he woke up on a different side of the bed every morning. He changed it because people were saying exactly what you're hearing on this webinar. My business is going to go out of business. I'm going to lose my livelihood. And as more and more of those voices are clear, I think we have a tremendous ability to affect the policies being made in Washington. So please continue to follow the Center for American Progress's series on DOGE, a small business majority. The co-host of this event is always looking for additional small business voices to help speak on these policies. And once again, thank you to everybody, and I hope you all have a very good day and a good week.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.